So all of our sessions, as I'm just about to tell you, are available, recorded and placed on the HDR Student Blackboard site. In the workshop, which is what we're doing today, the facilitator provides an overview of theory and principles, and today it's on feedback. And there's always a peer discussion in the breakout room in a workshop. And compared to our writing circles, which are a little bit more interactive, where we try and give you lots of exemplars and practical activities, and there's not necessarily a breakout room chat in those sessions. Sometimes we do ask you to prepare a specific reading, which we'll give you in the event reminder. All right, so let's do it. Today, we're talking about what is feedback. We're going to talk about how to manage feedback, how to respond to feedback, and also put in a little section on tips before, during, and after meetings. And then I'm going to end today's session with some final tips for you, the student. Okay, so just before we actually do talk about what is feedback, I thought it's a good idea to talk to you about what it means to be a researcher. And I think if we just spend a few minutes talking about that, it will help you understand the feedback process as well. So becoming a researcher means that you are becoming an expert in your field. You're creating a depth of knowledge. You're creating a critical voice. You're critically engaging with the literature or discourse community. And you're not simply expressing your own ideas, but you're doing so as a response to what others have said. And becoming a researcher means that you are showing how you have contributed to literature by joining in the conversation and showing that you have advanced and contributed to new knowledge by the time you're finished. So you're demonstrating that you really are becoming this expert in your field. Something else that researchers are learning. Oh, and there's a mistake in my spelling there, sorry about that. Researchers are learning transferable and professional skills. So I think you need to remember that this is actually happening to you throughout your candidature. You're not only undertaking original research, and you're also developing your disciplinary knowledge and research capabilities, but it's these transferable and professional skills which you'll be leaning on for the rest of your career. So I thought I would outline them a little bit more in detail. Amy's going to put in the link. Oh, she already has. Thank you so much. Very efficient. So the first skill that you're learning is written communication. Obviously, you're going to spend years of practice writing your thesis. So that's where your written communication comes in. Also research. As a researcher, you can find the best approach to a question, you can find relevant data, and you can design a way to analyze it. You're also learning your public speaking professional skills. So you will have strong oral communication skills, and this could be used in conference talks or teaching. And it really is allowing you to feel comfortable in front of an audience and engage with them. The next one is project management. So being an HDR student in itself is an exercise in project management. You have to make realistic timelines, and you have to overcome setbacks and things like that. The next one is leadership skills. So you're watching your supervisor, perhaps you're doing mentoring or teaching. Other ways that you can learn these leadership skills. Number 6 is critical thinking. So HDR students need to look at problems systematically. You need to find the links between ideas and evaluate arguments. You need to analyze information and come up with your own conclusions. So that's where your critical thinking skills come in. And the number 7 is collaboration. So obviously writing is a solo project, but you still need to work with others or deal with other people often. Throughout your candidature. You'll be doing experiments, preparing a journal. It's teaching you to get along with others, to communicate effectively, and also to resolve conflict. So I think for today's topic of managing and responding to feedback, you need to keep in mind what becoming a researcher means, all of those things we've just mentioned, and keep in mind those transferable skills that you're learning. obviously your supervisors are also aware of this, and in fact they are helping you to create these skills. So during the feedback process, you need to keep all of these things in mind, and you will also need to rely on these skills in the feedback process. All right, so that's just a little bit of what a researcher is. Now let's move on to what is feedback. Okay, so I think it's important to stress that feedback to the HDR student is unlike other feedback. It's really important that you all are reminded that feedback is an inevitable part of academia. It's really important that you understand that your supervisor is not only helping you to develop your research and also helping you to make that original contribution to your field, but their role is also to develop you as a researcher, which means there's an active process of teaching, training, and developing you to become that independent researcher so that you become that expert in your field. So with that in mind, feedback is part of your learning process. And as I said, it is inevitable. So your role and a key skill for you is to both learn to ask for feedback and also to deal with the feedback that's given to you. So I think this image says it all. I think something that you can really take away from today's workshop is that feedback is a two-way street. So effective feedback processes cannot be one-sided. They require partnership, they require interaction, and they require dialogue. So yes, I hope this image you can take away with you today, because you really need to be involved with the feedback that you receive. All right, so I've got some points which elaborate on that a little bit more. This is from Winstone and Carlis. I'll read them out for you. So feedback is a two-way communicated process. It's not just teacher commentary, okay? And we'll talk about that a lot today. Feedback is how you generate, how you make sense of and use that feedback for ongoing improvement. And I really like this sentence. You have to be an active feedback agent, okay? So you have to seek out the feedback that you want. The uptake of feedback often leads to change in behavior, cognition, motivation, or attitude. And that's really important as well. If you're down or stressed, the uptake of it, you need to understand that your behavior can change, and it should change, and you need to help yourself with the feedback that you get. And if you get negative feedback, which we will talk about later as well. Okay, so feedback is not just a product, but it's a process, and it's driven by students, not the teachers, not your supervisors. And really importantly is you can help your supervisors give you the feedback you want. Later today, I'm going to show you some notes from 3QT supervisors. Quite recently, there was a workshop from supervisors were in a panel, and they gave their own individual thoughts on how they want students to ask for feedback. So I think it's quite authentic and genuine, and I thought you'd be interested to see that. Okay, so this, I'm not sure if you've seen this before, but this is the good practice guidelines for HDR students and supervision, and it's endorsed by the GRC. Amy has the link for that. So I think it's just important for you to know that it exists, and I thought this little highlighted part was quite interesting for you as well. This part that's highlighted says it's the responsibility of the candidate to take the initiative in raising problems or difficulties, however elementary they seem, and sharing responsibility for seeking solutions, which really is all about managing up, and we'll talk about that as well. So, you know, please don't always put the onus onto the supervisor. You need to take that initiative as well, and in the raising of problems or difficulties or the feedback that you want. Okay, so I know you don't know this, but personally I've done a lot of research on feedback, and it's actually the topic of my own PhD, and I think it's really important to share this quote with you. So I'll read it. The most powerful single influence on achievement is feedback. And that's why you need to be involved in the process. And in fact, this quote, I've just recently given same quote to a workshop I did for supervisors when they provide feedback. And I think it's really important for them to see that as well, because we need to get feedback right. Okay, so we're just going to quickly talk about how to develop a feedback process. All right, this is a very small table. It's a suggested format that you could use. So at the start, it's really important that you develop a feedback process. So it's really important that you set expectations and you create a timeline to meet those expectations. And what you need to do is set short-term and long-term goals collaboratively. So don't just create them yourself, you need to create them with your supervisors. Now, if you're at the beginning of your candidature, fantastic, you can do that straight away. Even if you're not, you're in the middle or towards the end, it's not too late to have an open conversation about processes that you want to create with your supervisors. Okay, so I've got some long-term examples. So some long-term goals that you could discuss with your supervisor are, for example, articulation of your topic and the setting of research questions. Obviously, your project methodology, your lit review, your project design and implementation, the actual writing of the thesis, and possible publications emerging from the thesis. So make sure you have these conversations with your supervisor. Some short-term goals to discuss could be the first one was for the supervisors. Ignore the first one. From the second one, you need to talk to them about the regularity and nature of meetings. How formal or informal are they? Also talk about the purpose and the agenda of meetings. Who is going to attend the meetings, the membership of the meetings? Maybe it's all of the supervisory team, some of the supervisory team, but you can have that discussion so that it's clear. Also, the processes of monitoring the effectiveness of meetings, figure out who's going to take notes, for example. Also, you can have the discussion about ethical clearances, university requirements, or in fact, the requirements of the department that you're working in. All right, so I thought I'd just quickly share a poll, or I've created a poll for you to answer. This is leading to the next part about why are we scared to ask for feedback? So let me just launch this poll. Okay, so I've given 6 choices. Obviously it's anonymous and I've made them multiple choice, so you can choose more than one. But if you feel there's another reason that prevents you from asking for feedback, please just write it into the chat for me. All right, here we go. So I'll read it aloud. What prevents you from asking for feedback? Number 1, fear of looking foolish, fear of sharing my writing, perfectionism, fear of not being good enough, lack of preparation, or too shy. Let's take a moment. None of the above apply to some people. So if you'd like to share, you can even do a private message to me if you like, and I can read it aloud for you. If there's any something I've missed, what is it that prevents you from asking for feedback? I think you guys can all see that. What I might do is just end the polling and share the results with you. So interestingly, fear of not being good enough is the highest, and we're going to talk about the imposter syndrome later on today. But so someone in a private message has said that sometimes they don't know what to ask, the exact questions to ask, and that's really great because we are going to look at that in detail actually in today's session. Does anybody else want to write in the chat about why you or what prevents you from asking for feedback? Okay, so Brandon's saying that he tries to explore everything. And I think that's great, all alternative issues before heading to them. And I think that's called managing up, Brandon, and that's a great thing to do. Someone else has mentioned that sometimes supervisors are busy and they're reluctant to ask because of that reason, which is also true, but that should not be a reason to not ask. But we will talk about that later as well. Anybody else want to add something? Okay, so please feel free to do a private message if you want to remain anonymous. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk, and I also want to tell you the reason that we did that is so that you don't feel alone and you know other people in the same situation to you, just to normalize it a little bit for you all. All right, so we're going to talk about managing feedback. So we're going to talk about how to ask for feedback, when you should ask for it, and why you need to ask for feedback. Actually, I think that asking for feedback can be one of the hardest tasks involved in writing. We feel nervous, we feel vulnerable when we pass on our work to someone. So we're going to figure out how we can be more confident when asking for feedback. Okay, so here we go. I do want to reassure you, it's completely normal to feel nervous about showing someone your writing and asking for feedback. I think for most of us, the fear of negative feedback or criticism actually stops us from showing our work to people. Also, if you have had an unpleasant experience when you've received feedback in the past, you're also probably, a little reluctant to put yourself forward again to get some more. But as I said, feedback is inevitable and you need it to improve the quality of your writing and also the content of what you're writing. Okay, so there are a number of ways that you can ask for the feedback that you need. Let's have a look at them. So obviously, Kieran has just said, can we ask non-supervisor faculty for extra feedback? Non-supervisor faculty. Who do you mean? You mean people from another faculty, Kieran? I think if you have a relationship, you can ask your mum for feedback. You can ask feedback. And in fact, you should ask for feedback from everyone. But I think so. I think it's fine, especially if you have a relationship with people, and it's always good to get, you might get different feedback from different people, which is often the case as well. And then you have to use your evaluative judgment, which we will talk about later, to decide which feedback you want to take on board, because you're using your skill of recognizing the ability of your writing. You'll be able to judge and evaluate the level of your writing. So I think absolutely ask for feedback from everyone. So I just wanted to pose a question to you. How do you feel when a supervisor says, this writing needs work, you need to improve this, this could be better, this is not clear, or this is great? Or what if the supervisor strikes through an entire paragraph or an entire section? Has anyone ever had that happen? I hope no. So negative feedback like this, and it's true, it happens to most students. It can cause students to have a meltdown, and students can be confused and completely overwhelmed, which can actually cause you to stop writing. And then what happens is you actually create a lot of self-doubt. Good. Great. Thanks for contributing to the chat. I think it's really nice if you all just sort of chat to each other as well. And if you don't want your name to go out there, you can just directly message me, and I'm happy to read out your comment anonymously. So someone has said that they're happy to receive the guidance, even if it is negative. Okay. So what we need to do, a way to ask for feedback is to ask those specific questions. And it's actually that easy. You think, I think many students just say, can you please check this? or I've sent you such and such a draft, can you please get back to me? What you need to do is ask specific questions around self-identified issues. So there's some examples here. This is an early draft. I'd like feedback on the structure. On page 4, I've taken blah, blah approach. Do you think this works? Or I've highlighted some paragraphs that I'd like your thoughts on how relevant they are. You know, it's true, supervisors are busy. And if you do ask those specific and explicit questions, you're guiding them. You're that agent helping them to answer the questions that you need. And believe me, they will be so grateful that they're being guided by you to answer your specific questions. So Sonia's just added that yesterday her supervisor chatted to her about why it was not right rather than giving a hard marked review. So that's awesome. And Brandon saying, yes, the feedback really is to make your writing better. So having that great growth mindset as well when we receive feedback is also really important. Okay, so ask specific questions. Remember, saying, please give me feedback, you're really leaving things up to chance. You might have your supervisor quickly glance at it and just make a general comment. Another one could send you a spelling or a grammar check, or they might scroll over it with red pen. So the different forms of feedback, but it might not be the feedback that you're looking for. Okay, so before you press that send, please include the information about the explicit feedback that you're looking for. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples. If you want, if you have specific questions on the early stages, you could ask questions like this. Are my research questions valid? Am I addressing them with what I'm reading and thinking about? Is this just one PhD, or do you think I have too much information here? Okay, so ask those specific questions. Just to let you know, these will be created into a PDF file for you, and I'll send this to you after today's workshop, so you'll have all of the information. If you're in the proposal writing stage, these are the questions that you could ask. Are my research questions clear and viable? Is the focus and rationale for this research clear to the reader? I'm not going to read them all out because I'm going to lose my voice, but there's lots of really explicit questions that you can ask. Even something like this, are there any glaring errors like missing references and typos? Obviously, it's really good, and I think someone mentioned it earlier. Who was that? They like to, Brandon said, you know, he's going to really give it a thorough check before he sends it off to the supervisor. So please do that, but try to ask those really explicit questions. There's more questions for your chapter 1 or your literature review or your conceptual framework questions. Okay. So I think this is the magic of today's session, is to ask those explicit questions. And in fact, I recently did a similar workshop with some other grad staff, and I also gave this advice in that workshop. I think it was working with your working with your supervisor or something, and a student wrote back to me and said, Tasha, thank you so much. I asked all these explicit questions when I was giving some writing to my supervisor, and I got all of the information I needed, and she was, you know, really, really excited. So that's what I hope for all of you as well, that you're able to do that moving forward. Okay, so I have another way for you to think about asking those explicit questions, and that's using this feedback hierarchy. So this is a Think Well resource. Amy's going to put in the link for all Think Well resources, which are really wonderful for HDR students. Go and have a look at all the resources they have. So when you're thinking about how to ask those specific questions, what you can do is think of it in terms of this hierarchy. So at the bottom, we have the spelling and the grammar, and obviously that's the most basic feedback. It could also address layout and formatting. I don't think your supervisors are going to want to check spelling or grammar questions, so please try to avoid that. But in terms of maybe layout and formatting as well, and yeah, maybe we can do the one level ourselves. But moving up to the second level, this is the paragraphs. So what you could ask, questions you could ask is, does this paragraph have one main point, which it should, but you can get your supervisor to check that. Ask your supervisor, does he or she think that the paragraph is cohesive? Okay, so then we can move up to the next level. And this is where we're talking about the structure and the flow of the text and the writing style. So you could ask specific questions again, like, can the reader follow the flow of the argument? Do you think the paragraphs and sections flow, or do they need to be reorganized or reordered? Okay. Even questions like, is the writing style too wordy? Is it too short or too simple? So you can ask all those really specific questions as well. So as we move to the fourth level and up the hierarchy, we're moving away from words, and now we're focusing more on the content and the argument. Okay, so number 4 is engagement with literature, coherence of argument, clear understanding of significance of the work. So again, the questions that you could ask are, is there a logical flow in the text that leads to a coherent argument? Or how does this work engage with the literature? Okay, questions like that. So the next level, 5th level, is analysis and presentation of evidence. Where are we? Presentation of evidence. So you could ask questions like, is the argument clear and convincing? Does the evidence lead to a clear conclusion? Or are all of the conclusions supported by evidence? Perhaps your supervisor can suggest other literature for you to create more evidence, okay? And then at the highest level of the hierarchy, this is the level that requires significant academic ability, and this is the level that strongly reflects the qualities of doctoral level scholarship. So the questions that you ask here could be, what is the contribution to theory and knowledge, and how novel is this contribution? Perhaps are there alternative interpretations, or is there a critical assessment of the methodology and a deep understanding of the limits of the evidence and its interpretation? So again, really explicit questions for your supervisors, and they will be very grateful for those questions. Oh goodness, I was going to do it bit by bit, but there you go, all in one slide. Okay, something else that you need to remember is supervisors are busy, and so we really need to consider them when we ask for their feedback. It's surprising to me sometimes supervisors say that, you know, students will write, see ya, wanna, like all of this really informal language. You know, you need to have there's a professional relationship with them. So just remember to ask polite but clear requests for particular kinds of help. Please be professional, and please also ensure that your emails are also polite and professional. You know, we need to have that etiquette in our emails as well. And it's quite surprising how some students forget that when they're emailing. Okay, something else that you can do as that active agent for feedback is to ask your supervisors for exemplars. So exemplars, they highlight quality work. They can also highlight poor style. But we use exemplars to improve our performance. And as you see here, the second point, they allow you to distinguish between varying levels of work, and they sort of help you to harness your capability to make academic judgments. So I quite like this quote, analysing exemplars enables students to recognise the characteristics of quality work and acquire some of the tacit knowledge of the connoisseur. Okay, the other great thing about exemplars is they actually reduce your anxiety, because they can help you to figure out what is the expected outcome of your writing, okay? It's for you to practice noticing and making judgments, not just about the content, about what you read. So don't just look at them for content, but also about the mechanics of the writing. You know, you can look at the word choice, you can look at the flow, also look at, through the examples, look if there's that thread of the research problem throughout the chapters, which is your coherence. And I'll be talking about that later. Does the author show the value of the research throughout as well. So it's really important for you to notice the way researchers in your field write, and this will help you improve your writing. So please use QUT's, oh, where is it? The repository, QUT ePrints. Amy will put in a link for that, for the QUT ePrints. And again, remember, ask your supervisors for those explicit questions again. So, you know, sometimes students will say, oh, excuse me, could you please recommend a thesis for me to look at? And that's the end of it. You need to ask more questions. That you need to say, you know, please recommend a thesis. And if they recommend, ask them, well, which chapter would you like me to look at, or which section? Why are you recommending this particular thesis? Is it the organization? Is it the content? Is it, what is it? And help your supervisors give you that feedback that you want, or give you the answers that you want, okay? All right, so that's the link to the ePrints. Thanks, Amy. And there's also a direct link as well. And you can actually put in the title. This is just one more link. I think I have there, Amy, for you. Has anybody done this? Have you looked at QUT ePrints and asked your supervisor to recommend a thesis for you? Great. Something else that we forget is, have you actually read your supervisor's thesis? It's surprising to me how many students say, oh no, I didn't think about that. Please check theirs out, even if they are dinosaurs and it's a very long time ago. See if you can read theirs, but you know, read ones that they recommend. Absolutely. All right, good. I'm glad that I put that idea out there. All right, so now we're going to talk about when you should ask for feedback. All right, so the answer is the sooner the better. What you need to do is show your work early and show it often. Please don't wait until it's ready, because it's never ready. And sometimes people fool themselves and say, oh, I'll send this when it's finished, or I'll send it when I'm happy with it. What happens is, when you're holding on to it, you become attached to it. And then when you do receive that feedback, it's actually harder to take. So also, please take this away from today's workshop. If you send off if you send off a draft earlier, there's less emotional investment. And so the feedback, if it's negative, it won't devastate you so much. Okay. So then there's the waiting time. So we send it off, and then we have the waiting time. So we have passive or active waiting. I hope you like the image of this beautiful dog waiting for his or her family to come home. So passive waiting means you press send, and then you sit there with your arms folded, and you wait and hope that the longer you wait, your work will get higher up the person's priority list. And sadly, after about a week, the longer you wait, the lower down the priority list it goes. Active waiting means that when you press send an email, you suggest or ask for a date when you can expect the feedback. So before you press send in your email, you're going to say, here is the draft of the introduction. I was hoping that we could discuss this at our meeting on Friday the 4th. Or I was hoping to submit this to a journal by the end of the month. So it'd be good if you could get the changes to me by Friday the 25th. You know, so give them those deadlines as well. Absolutely not, Catherine. It's not rude to ask for a date. But again, when we were talking about earlier about the short-term goals and long-term goals, these are the things that you can establish with your supervisory team, certainly at the beginning of candidature, but I think anytime throughout candidature, you need to have that groundwork with your supervisors. Yes, you don't know what's on their plate, which is why it's good for you to suggest a date, and then they could respond saying that date doesn't suit, but how about this date? So you negotiate it, okay? So you're not just sitting there waiting. Okay, but thanks for contributing to the chat. So also, while you're waiting, do some writing. Come along to the weekly lounges that we have here. I'm the facilitator of these, the HDR Writers Wellbeing Lounge. We do Pomodoro techniques. We do 25-minute, thanks Catherine, 25-minute writing focused sprints. And there's really no excuses for you to say, oh, I didn't get any writing done. You can do them in the lounge. You can meet Catherine, you can meet other people, and I'm the motivator. We motivate each other and we get some writing done. Okay, and it's also a really great way to connect with people as well. Okay, so I hope you like my little choice of picture here. In English, we say, why did the chicken cross the road? So I've chosen this image for the why. Why do we ask for feedback? Well, the reasons we ask for feedback is you need that feedback to improve the quality of your writing. You need critical feedback, because it helps you grow as a researcher. It also helps you to examine and strengthen your ideas, okay? So there's all these positive reasons why we need it. It can also highlight weaknesses in any model that you have, and it helps you to progress your knowledge, okay? Even if the feedback is harsh, these are the reasons that we ask for it. Okay, so now we're going to move on to responding to feedback. And so just as the ability to deliver effective feedback is a key skill for the supervisors, the ability for you as the student to receive feedback and deal with objective critique is also a key skill for you, the research student. So we're going to break this into 3 parts. We're going to develop process for responding to feedback. Then I'm going to talk to you about how to manage difficult feedback and also about building resilience. All right, so one process which can really laser focus your feedback is to use a table to organize the feedback and your revisions. This is also really good practice because this is what will happen right at the end after examinations. They ask you to fill out a table. So as you can see here, on the left is the feedback and on the right is the response to your supervisor's feedback. If you like this, please use it. I'm not saying you have to, but it's a good habit to get into. Create a little table, make it very clear for them, and respond to the feedback that they've given you. Okay, so there's one way. Next, I think it's also really important to point out to you, and please listen to this, because there are different types of feedback that your supervisors give you. So I think it's important to make that distinction between instructions and comments, okay? So instructions are the revisions that you have to do. Maybe there's an error in a claim that you can't substantiate, or maybe something doesn't work. So in this type of feedback with instructions, you have to fix these things. However, sometimes supervisors also just make comments on suggestions. Sometimes they're just flippant comment, quite offhanded, and they're really just suggestions. So they could say, oh, you could do this, or you need to consider, what you need to do, is to consider the suggestion and decide whether it is a good idea or not. So for example, your supervisor might say, I wonder about whether you should restructure this section. Would that work better? So if that's what your supervisor says, it doesn't mean you have to go and restructure that section. What you need to do is have a think about it, and don't ignore it. Please don't ignore it, but you need to have a think about it and decide whether you want to restructure it, and then you can have that conversation if you want to, okay? So go back and look at the comments and see, look at the feedback and decide, is it an instruction or is it just a comment, okay? Sometimes we receive very vague feedback from the supervisor. So they may say, this needs work, or it needs more depth. To be honest, these comments aren't very helpful, which is why I'm also doing workshops for supervisors, and I'm telling the supervisors give that specific feedback as well. So what you need to do is go back to the supervisor and ask those specific questions. So for example, you'd say, which part did you think needed more work? Or I was considering putting more detail here. Is that what you want? If you don't get more specific advice, you may end up changing things and actually making it worse, okay? So the word okay is also really vague. What does it mean? It could mean it's on track. It could mean it's okay for now, but you might need to work on it later. It could mean it's just okay, you can do better than this. So what you need to find out is what okay means to your supervisor. Again, I keep saying it, ask those specific questions. So are you happy with the introduction as it is? Do you think I need to add more detail? I'm a bit worried about the argument on page 4. Do you think it needs more detail? Something like that, okay? So I am encouraging your supervisors to give that specific feedback, but you need to ask for it too. Okay, so sometimes we get awful, harsh feedback. For example, I hope you never receive feedback that this is rubbish. What you need to do, obviously it's very unpleasant and you have every right to be upset, but the biggest advice is to breathe before you open any feedback, especially if you're expecting it, and leave your emotions at the door. Keep your emotions out of it. In cases where your supervisor gives harsh feedback, it's advisable to not show early drafts. You need to be quite, you need to have done a fair bit of work, okay? Because if you're getting constant criticism, it can actually ruin your self-confidence, and that might culminate in you not writing very much. Catherine's just asked, can I ask questions about being on track? Absolutely. And it's great to have a thorough supervisor. And perhaps if you're feeling like you're not getting positive feedback, you could actually say, is there anything that I'm doing really well? Are you finding, you know, get them to give you that positive feedback, okay? So yes, what points have I got here? Prepare yourself for harsh criticism. Before you open the document, be clear about your expectations. Realize that this person will probably have lots of criticism if you expect that. It's probably about them, it's their style. And I think there's people here today who've had that happen to them. And what another great strategy is just to talk to each other and know it happens to other people as well. Yeah, great. Catherine's going to ask, so give me some feedback, Catherine. What kind of feedback do you get from your supervisor? But I think that's great. Say to your CEO, oh, could you please give me something? Could you note something positive about my writing this time? And even that is just sort of suggesting to your supervisor that perhaps they are constantly giving negative feedback, and it might help them to reconsider how they give feedback. After all, supervisors are humans too. Okay, and Sonia's suggesting you can, the feedback is what you can build on. Okay, good. What am I up to next? So it can be completely, it's natural to have an emotional reaction if you get negative feedback and you read all those comments or see lots of red marks on your text. At that moment, you're probably not going to make a very rational response to any feedback. So what you can do is you can read the feedback. You can have a little cry if you want. You can have a tantrum. But then what you need to do is calm down. Sometimes you need that distance. You need a bit of time before you address the feedback. So that's also some advice I have for you today. Take the time that you need before you go back in and talk about that, before you go back in and re-engage. However, my advice is don't take too long, couple of days maybe. The longer you leave the feedback, the worse it gets in your mind. And also you don't want your supervisor to forget the feedback that they've given you as well. So not too long between. But also some other advice is that you can get someone else to read it for you. And often if you ask a friend, a colleague, family member, they're not as emotionally invested as you are, especially if your supervisory relationship isn't great, and they'll be able to look at the feedback objectively as well. Okay, so lean on your friends, family, and peers. Which brings me to the next part of building resilience. So let's read Hannah's comment. Hannah says, I often read through feedback and then close the document for a day and come back to it once I've recovered from the emotions from the feedback, and I can read it again with a clearer mind. That's beautiful, Hannah. Thanks for sharing that. And it's exactly what I want to say. Have that little bit of time and distance. And the second time or third time you read it, you really are more rational about it. And then you can re-engage with the comments they've given you. It's happened to me before as well. And in fact, after some time, I've actually really valued the research that, the feedback that I was given. Okay, so I have a couple of children, and when they were in primary school, we had this wonderful principal, and he always used to say to them, there are 5 keys to success. And just in case you're interested out there, they were organization, persistence, getting along, confidence, and the last one was resilience. And I think it's great to tell children that, but it's good for us as adults to be reminded as well. Resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, and they've also put its toughness. So build your resilience, and you can actually, I think Amy has a link to a self-paced module that we have in GRED on resilience, and you can, thanks so much, you can go in and learn the skills to build that resilience. Great, and Sonia's just mentioned as well, that table I showed earlier, it does take the emotion out of the feedback as well, and it's very specific. So thanks for that. All right. So now I'm going to rest my voice for a moment. And I know sometimes Kerry and I get feedback that I don't like the breakout sessions, and then other feedback is I love the breakout room sessions. So some people love them, some people don't, but I really think it's if you haven't been recently, please enter the rooms today, because it really is a great way for you to meet others. And again, make that, have that connection and networking as well. And have that opportunity to meet. I'll just quickly read Kieran's comment, because I think it's a good one. Kieran saying, I had a full-on breakdown during my original proposal stage feedback, stepped away, dropped my ego, that's a good one, rewrote according to the feedback, and then felt bulletproof. So bravo to you, well done. Yeah, I'm going to share everything at the end of this. And Sonia, if you don't have a camera or mic, you can still go into the breakout room and just type. So if anyone's in the room with Sonia, she's going to be typing instead. So the topic today, I think all of you are familiar with this. You'll get a little button saying to please join. If I find that you're in a room by yourself, I may have to place you in another room. So just be patient if you are changed into a different space. All right, so the questions that I want you to talk about today. So obviously, please introduce yourself first, explain your research topic very quickly, and then in your experience, how do you ask for feedback? And how do you respond to feedback? And do you have any tips? So we'll only do it for like 10 minutes. If you are uncomfortable or have any reason, you can stay in the lobby with me. But I really do think, even if you just want to stay there and listen, it's great to meet other people in your cohort. All right, so there are the questions. Just again, how do you ask for feedback? How do you respond to feedback? And do you have any tips to share? All right, so it's 10 to 2 now, so we'll come back just after 2. And here we go. I'll see you guys all soon. No worries, Ruth. If you want to type, that's fine as well. Okay, see you soon.
Method of dealing with it is throw a tantrum for 3 days and then come back and reread it, because when I first read the feedback, all I can read is you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. But then come back later and just do it, and it doesn't seem quite so degrading. But I know the two people I was in my breakout room with had yeah, thanks, Catherine. I'm glad I'm not the only one who takes that long to come down off the tree, out of the tree. But that makes me feel a lot better. Both the people I was in my breakout room with, they would go talk to a friend or to other people in their colleagues in the learning space, and that would help take the, I think they're both chatting, so they might have I might let them say it in the chat, but long story short, they talk to people about it, and that, I think that's the missing link in my process.
Fantastic. And I think even you just being here today, Kieran, you're normalizing it, you're understanding, and just tonight you'll sleep better knowing that, hey, it's not just me who have 3-day tantrums and take the time, take a while to come back and really process and understand that feedback. So Monica is saying she loves meeting the people who are much further down the academic journey than her. They have such great insights into our future experiences. Yeah, great. Thank you, Kieran, for sharing that. Does anybody else have anything else they'd like to contribute?
Hello. So in our group, we have people at different stages of project. So at least 2 of us are just start to work on the literature review, probably the proposal stage, and we have other advanced peers that are in their final year. So we find out that it's good to set up a rhythm of your meeting with your supervisors, and that worked really well for some of us. But how frequent the meeting would be will probably depends on what stage your project is, and maybe what you find maybe the most productive, and in tune with your project. And also, also there's a very good point that one of us contributed, is that just don't be afraid to turn up at the door of your supervisor outside of your scheduled meeting and address any problem, no matter how small it is.
Right.
Yeah, and also from myself is I find that when I receive a doubt or questioning mark from my supervisor, that's an opportunity for me to actually to come back and deepen some of the thinking. Just as if I find out some literature that is opposing my hypothesis, and that is an opportunity for me to really come back and deepen, the logic and the rationale behind my hypothesis.
Yeah,
that's
brilliant.
Really, yeah,
that's such great advice, Yonghui. I would completely concur. So thank you for giving that insight as well. And Brandon has also said, you don't have to, if you create a set time for your meetings, it doesn't have to be for the entire PhD. You can change the frequency as well. Supervisors know that as well when they're giving feedback. The feedback at the beginning of candidature needs to be less critical. And there's a whole workshop there as well, the kind of feedback supervisors are instructed to give as well. The words escape me at the moment, but constructive and different types of feedback at different times of the candidature as well. Great. Okay, so what we're going to do now is actually talk about meetings, and I've got some tips for you for before, during, and after your meeting. So let's go into that. And again, please add your comments as you like. So, all right, let's do it. So before your meeting, or I should just begin by saying to you, as a PhD, or excuse me, as an HDR candidate, you are expected to be proactive in consulting with your supervisor. So you have to be prepared before the meeting. You need to make an agenda. It's really important for you to list any achievements you've made since your last meeting. You could also bring a list of interesting insights that you've had, or readings that you've read. Obviously, before any meeting you have, please, before any document you give, please proofread it. And something else that's really important is to be honest about what you've done. Sometimes we think, oh my goodness, I haven't done much, but I've got this meeting and I still have to go. Oh, I might just sort of fib a little bit, a little white lie about my progress. So in fact, it's incredibly important for you to be honest about your progress or the lack of it. And it's most critically important to be honest with yourself. What you can do before you go is come to all the writing support offerings. You can get some peer feedback. Greg now has peer feedback sessions, and in fact there's one this week on Thursday. Something else you can do before your meeting or before you hand in any document is to check your paragraphs have cohesion, and check that your chapters have coherence. So the difference between cohesion and coherence: cohesion is that sentence to sentence connection, and coherence is where you've got the thread of your research throughout your chapters. So Kieran's actually just offered to given you his email. Great, thank you so much. And I really do hope that you do connect with each other in this space as well. We do this in the lounges as well, so come along to the lounges, and it's really helpful for you to connect there. I'd just like to stress to you that proofreading is really important, because you don't want to waste your supervisor's time. You don't want to, obviously down the track, you don't want to waste the reader's time. You want the content to be the focus. Okay, so let's go to the next. Also, as I said here, check that your chapters have cohesion and, excuse me, your paragraphs have cohesion and your chapters have coherence. So basically, cohesion is that micro level of the text. I run a workshop, or excuse me, a writing circle on cohesion. If you haven't been, you have to come. It's really useful for you to get the words and sentences and how they join in your paragraphs. But in contrast, coherence, it relates to the organization and connection of ideas and whether they can be understood by the reader. And so they're the macro level of the text. There's actually a coherence workshop coming up. Amy's going to put in a link. Please go along to that workshop. It's a writing circle. It's a really great writing circle. Please remember that your paragraph needs to be cohesive. It has to have one main point, and it needs to be coherent as well. It needs to connect to the main points in the section, chapter, and thesis, and it needs to include the value of your research and refer to your research questions and things. All right, this is what cohesion in a paragraph looks like. I won't go into massive detail because I do that in the actual writing circle, but the paragraph needs to have one idea that you state using your voice as the expert researcher at the beginning, the evidence in the middle, and the relevance to your research at the end. Your chapters have to look like lots of little mini paragraphs. Hopefully you guys have all eaten lunch. It's not making you hungry. And they all connect in all these mini perfectly constructed paragraphs. Okay, so then we move to during your meetings. Let's focus on that. So Amy's going to put in a link to this document. It's called the HDR Supervision Meeting Guide. I'll also send it to you at the end of today in an email. But what you can do is take notes on your supervisor's questions, feedback, insights, tasks, and directions, everything on this. Or if you don't actually have this guide at hand, just write it on a piece of paper. You're expected to act on what took place in the meeting, either by agreeing or following up on the feedback, or by negotiating and also presenting your scholarly viewpoint. So please focus, please take notes, use this meeting guide. You could record if you like, but you need to get the permission from your supervisory team. Don't forget anything. That's why beforehand you need to make sure you have all the questions you need. Also be brave and ask a question, a burning question that you're nervous to ask. You know, any clarification you need or anything you don't understand, no matter how small it is, as Yonghui said to us earlier, just be brave and ask that question. All right. Something else that you can do during your meeting is to schedule the next appointment then and there in the meeting. If you don't have a regular occurring meeting, do it while you have your supervisor's attention. If it's better to be on a regular schedule, but what you need to do is agree on a date. I think it's better to avoid email conversations to set it up, so that's why you can try and do it in the meeting. Okay, great, Kieran. Sonia's, yes, this coherence writing circle is fantastic, and so is the cohesion one. You need to go to both of them. All right, so after your meetings, is this what you look like after your meetings? I hope so. So what we can do is we reflect, we rethink, we revise, and then rewrite. An important tip for you is to send notes or minutes of the meeting to your supervisor. If you haven't done that before, it's okay. It doesn't matter where you are in candidature, you can start now. And include a list of all the deadlines that you've agreed upon. You can confirm if the feedback is a suggestion or a requirement, as I said, talked to you about earlier. Is this a must fix or is this just a suggestion? Obviously, after the meeting, go through all your notes. And Sonia is saying that she keeps notes in a OneNote file and she emails the supervisory team a copy, which is a fantastic idea. Kieran, that there isn't a link, the form is actually there, but I will send you everything up in a follow-up email later this afternoon or tomorrow morning. So we're also going to talk about the next steps, which is called TNT, and I'm going to explain that to you in a moment. And again, any concerns, you need to address them straight away. Please remember to keep your notes, file your notes, because you can use them as your tool in your next meeting. I quite like this quote by a former president of the US. I actually say this a lot to my daughter. She's in grade 12 this year, so I have always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. Plans change. Sometimes they can become out of date as soon as they're written. Experiments might not work as expected. The interviews and field trips may take longer than you anticipated. Sometimes things even occur ahead of schedule. So what you need to do is progress checks to review against the plan that you've made. And then you need to update your plan, okay? It's important to do planning. All right. His dates look dodgy. Oh goodness, those dates are dodgy. I'm so sorry. Yes, I will fix that. I can't remember who has a hand. William the Conqueror was in 1061. Thank you, Sonia. Yes, I meant to change that. Who wants to do a quick Google search for me and tell me when Dwight Eisenhower graced us with his presence? All right, excuse my incorrect dates there. Okay, so what I thought we could do now, instead of going into breakout rooms, we'll just in the chat. Do you have any quick tips before, during, or after a meeting? Would anybody like to quickly add something? 1953 to 61. Okay, so Lisa's saying action everything after the meeting. Great. Always thank them. Great. That's really great. They really appreciate that. Good. Any other tips? Something that's worked for you? You can put on your microphone if you feel more comfortable.
Yeah, this is kind of related to something that was already said, but I like to prove that I respect that they've given me their time by, if they give me a task, I do the task. Yeah, I consider the thing and have some proof that I have considered it. And also something that I don't do enough, but I try to, is as soon as you finish the meeting and you get home, send an email saying, hi, thanks for your time. This is just a rundown of what, this is the rundown of what I saw happen during the meeting. Is this about right? Am I forgetting anything? Yeah, and sometimes I will have forgotten something major and they go, remember, you need to do this by this date.
Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. And Chanaka has just said that as well. Before, send points to be discussed, and after, send the meeting minutes. So that means you do need to, have a memory of what you discussed, and it is good to ask them, is there anything I'm missing? Okay, great. Thanks, Kieran. It's so great that we can support each other and help each other. Please continue just to write anything here in the chat. So the next the next section, I haven't actually showed this before, but I think it's really valid. It's some tips from 3 QT supervisors, unnamed, but they're all quite different, and I think it's really nice for you just to know what they think. Yonghui has just said it's really important to have that human connection, sparking creativity through empathetic bonding. And I think that's really true as well, because sometimes we forget that supervisors are busy people. They have families as well, and often they have more than one student, and it really is good to have that connection to them as well. All right, so here we go. I've got 3 supervisors, A, B, and C, and see how my voice goes for reading them out to you. So Supervisor A says, if email doesn't work, make a phone call or turn up, just like Youngpri said to us. Skype or online chat. So this was obviously before Zoom, if the supervisor is not in the country. Another tip from this supervisor, have a group of people to support you. Develop and cultivate that group. There can be people outside of QUT who are in a similar field to you. I think students forget that as well. You can go to other groups. You need to set up your workflow. Students need regular communication with other students, which set out clear expectations and management of your work. This supervisor also says at the end of the day, it's your PhD. Maintain your passion and deal with issues early on. This was actually a live forum, just before COVID, and I really I was busy scribbling down all of their points. Before we move to the next supervisor, let's just quickly read Ruth's contribution. Her supervisor advised to make short PowerPoint presentations. So she's put in agenda, progress, and next steps, just so I have some talking points during the meeting. It seems to work fine for now because my supervisors can see concrete output from me. After the meeting, she sends the file to the supervisors. Well done. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, so let's go to Supervisor B. This person says, students need a self-directed learning process. The supervisor is your tool for your research. Be bold, be courageous. Regular contact is a good strategy in order to have a good relationship with your supervisor. Please deliver work that has thought and effort. PhD and Masters is hard work, so you can think of it as an apprenticeship. Make a broad and strong network here today with each other or around the place. Get publishing. This supervisor thinks you can get publishing, and also to look at small grants. Don't wait until your last year. Please help yourself. So I think that's some good advice.
Sorry, just on that get publishing
Yes.
one.
Yes.
That's something that I've wanted to look more into. I think there may have been a meeting discussion or something on that earlier on in the year that I missed. I'm at the beginning of my MPhil. Is it reasonable for me to be trying to publish to peer-reviewed journals, or would I be just looking to publish anywhere I can? Or
Kieran, it's something I think you can reach for the stars and absolutely start thinking about publishing for peer-reviewed journals. I would suggest it's a conversation that you have with your supervisor, but look into it yourself. Look into the journals that you could possibly publish with, and it's never too early. It's always good to have a plan.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. All right, so let's go to the third supervisor. So this supervisor says, if you disagree with your supervisor, show evidence, okay? Be proactive, talk to your supervisor. Tell the supervisor how you get the information to them and have a plan to avoid contacting them when they're very busy. So this supervisor wants you to have that plan. Don't give him a chapter the day before a meeting. I think that's really good advice as well. So, students will wait to have their perfect draft and send it the day before, and the supervisor may not have time to look at it. Some people have given you some information, Kieran, in the chat you can have a look at. If there's a lack of feedback, this sometimes can be positive. So that's a really good comment from the supervisor. It doesn't always mean it's negative if you don't have a lot of feedback. Please be organized. Be ready months before a milestone, which is unusual, but if you can, strive to be ready. Trick yourself, maybe give yourself a false date and be ready so that you're not rushing around formatting at the end. Again, look at this clever supervisor. Students should ask specific questions and narrow things down. International students should use reading and writing support offered to them, and Australian students should too, and please proofread. Something else this supervisor recommends is to celebrate your successes. Build a strong relationship with your supervisors, and if there are any problems with the supervisory team, you need to deal with it. Please don't just leave it, okay? Also, I found some other general comments which I've compiled. Supervisors want you to be accountable. They want you to realize they're busy, so don't miss a schedule if possible. Something else that was a common theme is don't disappear without telling them why. Students sometimes go AWOL and the supervisors have no idea. Please tell them if there's something happening in your life. Listen to the feedback your supervisor has been giving you. Please check your draft before you submit it. So that absolutely means, you know, that hierarchy, no spelling or grammar errors, because that will frustrate your supervisors. Also realize supervisors are human too. They also want you to understand the genre, of academic writing, which is what we can help you with, academic writing support in GRED. A supervisor also suggested to write 1,000 words a week. If you come along to the lounges in my focused writing sprints, you're able to do that. Read a thesis, like I gave you that thesis repository link. Go and read a thesis, and then you know what to expect. Read more, and read more so that you have some depth and scope of knowledge. And then something else is be careful that you are not overclaiming your originality. If you think, oh my God, this is an original contribution, perhaps you actually need to do some more reading because it may not be. Monica's saying she loves the sprints. Thanks, Monica. Hope you're coming to the lounge tomorrow. Come along, 1,000 words a week. You guys, you can do it. So everyone's giving Kieran some support there with the comments. We've now reached the final tips part, which is the end of today, but some really good tips for you. So the first one is this one, TNT. I actually love this. Has anybody heard this acronym TNT? What does it mean? No, it's not what you think. I actually stole this from Thinkwell again. I think it's from Thinkwell, yes. TNT means the next thing. So sometimes when you're feeling overwhelmed and you're thinking, oh my God, I need to do this, and I need to do this, and I need to do this. Well, what you can do is just think of the next thing. And this was described to me with an analogy of the Tour de France, the cycling competition. So when we think about the next thing, I think I'd like to tell you about that example. So in the Tour de France, when the cyclists are climbing the huge mountains in the Alps, did you know that the riders never actually look up to the top of the mountain? If they did look all the way up, they just probably want to give up because it just seems too hard. So what they do, they look at the next corner or they look at the wheel in front of them. And that's what you need to do. As a research student, sometimes there's so much to read. Your data set is huge and you maybe don't know where to start. It can be really overwhelming. So what you need to not do is think about that long list. Just work on the next thing and focus on that TNT, the next thing. So if you look at this picture, you can see that the funnel goes from small to micro, and then it goes down to nano. So a micro step could be a paragraph to your lit review. Perhaps you're thinking that's not much, but the micro steps helps you to get started to the next thing. Sometimes even micro steps are too big. So you can do a nano step, and that might be something like just finding the most recent version of your document. And honestly, these nano and micro steps, they actually work because you're not being overwhelmed and you are actually taking action. Okay, so I hope this little funnel helps you to know that just TNT, just the next thing, whether it be small, micro, or nano steps that you make. Okay, another little tip I have for you is to manage up. So it's a skill. It's about being proactive, and there's three things. The first thing is you anticipate a potential problem, you communicate and mitigate it, and you provide solutions and options. So you can go to your supervisor and say, this is the solution I have for this potential problem, okay? So I really like this page as well. Be proactive and anticipate the problem, communicate and mitigate it. And most importantly is to provide solutions and options. Your supervisor might not agree with your solutions and options, or they might offer other ones. So this is what you can say. You can say, here's the problem I foresee coming. Here are the actions I've taken to mitigate it. Here are the solutions I propose to fix it. And here is how we can keep it from happening in the future. Okay, so this is managing up. So it's another good tip for you. Sometimes, especially if you're a new researcher, you may feel insecure about your work. It's normal to need a lot of guidance through the initial stages of your project. Your supervisor is a valuable source of information and feedback that will help you improve. Please also draw on other sources to improve the quality of your work. So you can get guidance from books, from each other, like you're doing here today, from the writing circles we have, the workshops that we have, the lounge that I've been talking about, and also peer feedback sessions. We have a peer feedback session on Thursday. Please check your e-update for that. I don't think I've actually given that link to Amy, sorry. So Kieran's saying, for those in first year or MPhil plan to go, I recommend looking into NaNoWriMo in November. Okay.
Yeah, it's a writing competition where you've got to write. Doesn't matter how crap or what it's about. You just need to write 50,000 words in the 30 days of November. And I've done it every year for the last 10 years, and I now have gotten it to, I can write 100,000 words in 2 weeks. It's all crap. It's all crap, but it certainly helps if you're only trying to do 1,000 good words in a day. It helps to have the ability to just pop out a sentence fluidly. So
yeah, fantastic. That's great. Thank you. I've not heard of that. So yeah, that's nice to know. Ruth saying she attempted it, but she failed halfway. And you know what, Kieran? You've been to the lounges before, haven't you?
I've not, but that's only been because I've had the worst case of insomnia for a month or two now. But I would love to go to them. So the next one I'm going to, yeah,
it's tomorrow
I'm
at
going
10
to.
in the morning. Okay, awesome. And then
whereabouts? That's at KG in the library?
No. It's right here. It's online.
Oh, right. Oh, that's it.
Amy put in that link before. It's
I'll grab that now.
All over Australia, and we all sit in together and just do writing. Later on in May, there's actually we're doing half-day writing retreat as well, and I'll also have to I'll be facilitating that. Thanks, Sonia. So another tip that I have for you is to build your evaluative judgment. That means the ability to judge the quality of your work and others' work. Okay, look at the exemplars, look at other theses, and just determine whether your work is at the standard that it should be. Okay. Also, we talk about self-regulated learning skills. So it's the way you monitor, direct, and regulate actions towards your learning goal. Please use these skills as build these skills as well. I'm sure you all know, but we have lots of themes in our writing circles. Come along to them. They're obviously in your e-updates every fortnight. We have workshops. Kerry and I have tried to create them according to the phase of candidature, early, mid, and late. Come along to all of these. Amy, are you able to please repost the link for the lounge? That'd be great if you could do that. We talk about writing regularly. Robert Boyce is a psychologist and researcher, and he talks about procrastination binging, where you sit and you write, for a whole day. Well, instead of doing that, we need to do regular writing. It's called snacking versus binging. And if you do that, you're going to write more productively, painlessly, and successfully. Thanks, Amy. So they're the lounges. Thanks, Amy's just put that link in again. And another tip I have for you is just to let you know about these secrets. There's 7 secrets. Again, this is a Think Well resource of highly successful research students. And I think I will read them again for you. So the secret one is the care and maintenance of your supervisor. Isn't that an interesting way to think of your supervisor? We need to maintain your relationship with your supervisor. It's your job to make sure you get the supervision you need. Secret 2, write and show as you go. Write early. Secret 3, be realistic. It's not a Nobel Prize. The thesis doesn't have to be perfect. It may never be perfect, but it needs to be finished. Secret 4 is this: say no to distractions. Secret 5, it's a job. That means regular hours, a plan, milestones, and accountability. Secret 6 is to get help because you don't have to do it all by yourself. And the last secret is you can do it. I love this. PhD is 10% intelligence and 90% persistence. Okay, so that's a great secret. I talked to you earlier about your imposter moments. Maybe that's why you don't ask for feedback when we did that poll earlier. I quite like this poem, but there's a link here to a really great TED talk about the imposter syndrome. And it talks, if you have, it's only 4 minutes, it's not long at all. If you've never heard of the imposter syndrome, you must watch it. Many HDR students have felt this, so it's good to know you're not alone. The imposter syndrome actually refers to an internal experience of believing that you're not as competent as others perceive you to be. It's a psychological pattern, and it's where you doubt your skills and there's a fear of being exposed. I think if you know that others have this fear too, it really normalizes you. We all are, Kieran. All right, so go and watch this video. I'll be interested to hear your feedback on it. Something else that you can do is to register for this self-paced module. It's a fantastic module. You can take it anytime, and especially it'll help you with your organization skills when things are getting overwhelming. So I think, Amy, did I give you the link for that? I'm not sure if I did. If I didn't, I'll actually, I think I have the link here. I can put it into the chat for everyone. Oh, I'm not sure if that worked. But anyway, it's an online module. And the thing I love about this is it introduces you to a Gantt chart, and it helps you with your organization skills. Something else that you can do is ask if you need any information or any support. Thanks, Amy's just got the link to that self-paced module. You can talk to the HDR team here. You can go to the Director of Research Training or the Research Training Coordinator, to your faculty, go to your head of school, go to a trusted member of faculty, and there's also QUT counselling where all conversations are confidential. Okay, and some events coming up. Tomorrow is the lounge. On Thursday, Kerry's the other language and learning educator with the team here. She's running these peer feedback sessions. There's links for that in the e-update that you receive. Next Wednesday, there's the writing circle that Kerry will do on coherence, a great writing circle. Please register for that one. And then you can see there's a couple more lounges. As I said, they're weekly, so come along to them. And we do really just do focused writing. So I will be sending you a survey for today's session, and I'll be including the links to the PowerPoint and things in the email, but this is where you can find all the links. Sometimes students will say, I can't access the link. You actually need to be logged into Blackboard for them to work. So if you are having problems, that's the reason. All right, so if you want to stay and ask some questions, you're welcome, but otherwise it's really nice for you all to be here today. Thank you for contributing to the chat, and thanks, Bahar. It's nice to have you all. Please put your student number in if you haven't already, and look forward to seeing you at the lounge tomorrow to get lots of focused writing done. Thanks, Shafina. Bye, Ruth. Thanks, James. Bye, Yasara, Kieran. Diana, thank you. Thanks, Rosa.
Thank you,
I might
Kathy.
stick around. I might stick around just to hear any questions.
Sure, sure. Bye, Younghui. Thank you.
I know I find that if I take a day off of doing my MPhil, it's harder to then the next day start. So yeah, the more work I do on it, the easier it is to do more work on it.
Kieran, we in the lounges we use the Pomodoro technique. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, yeah. It means
25
tomato. Means tomato in Italian.
Yeah. So that's what we use, and we also have a 20-minute time to connect. And usually I'll bring in a topic of conversation that's, you know, interesting, and yeah, it's just a great chance to connect as well.
That's great, because I'm really looking for some peers who not necessarily doing even a similar subject to me, but just a group of people who have kind of the same idea of their career trajectory, because I want to take this MPhil, I want to then do a PhD, and I would like to have some people who, you know, I can become friends with over time, who I can share that with, because I just realized after my last job and all the jobs I'd done previously that I was always solo on everything, and I'm just so over that.
Yeah, exactly. And so coming to these events, you end up seeing the same names and faces if you go into breakout rooms, and then these people become your support network. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Like I said, I'm the host of that. But,
good.
Welcome to QT and your whole research journey.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I've been getting so much more